Hi, welcome to our webinar on electric emergency vehicles. This webinar is part of our ongoing electrification series, now in its second year. My name is Kyle Purdy, and I'm a program associate with the Electrification Coalition. The Electrification Coalition is a nonpartisan nonprofit that works to accelerate the adoption of light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles to overcome the economic, public health, and national security challenges that have long stemmed from America's dependence on oil. Across the country, cities are electrifying more and more of their fleets, including specialized vehicles. Today, we'll be discussing emergency vehicles. As communities aim to meet their transportation goals, electric fire trucks, police vehicles, paramedic vehicles, and refuse trucks are essential to meet those goals. You're in for a treat today as we have three great guest speakers. I'm now going to turn it over to Keith Kerman, Chief Fleet Officer for New York City. Take it away, Keith.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Great to be with you today. I'm Keith Kerman, New York City's Chief Fleet Officer and a Deputy Commissioner at DCAS, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. On behalf of Mayor Eric Adams and our Commissioner Luis Molina, it's great to be able to talk about what we're doing on the electric vehicle front, especially as relates to emergency service in police vehicles. Next slide. So a little bit about us. We're the largest municipal fleet in the United States, 29,000 vehicles, add in 10,000 contracted school buses. It's a large fleet operation. Our most well-known fleets, of course, the New York State Police Department, Fire Department, Department of Sanitation, but 50 total fleet agencies and offices. Interesting fact, everything you're looking at in this picture is electric. Next slide. So we're a large operation. We're a town fleet constitutionally, but it's a large town, it's a large fleet. We might spend as much as $500 million in acquisitions in any year. We're the largest EV charging network in New York State, the largest electric fleet in New York State, the third largest gas station operator in New York State. The core of our program, 1,300 mechanics, over 250,000 work orders every year. Next slide. We are everywhere. So we have something called the Fleet Office of Real-Time Tracking. We track 29,000 vehicles live. I often quip that you can't walk 2 blocks in New York City without seeing one of our vehicles. We now can show that analytically. We are across the city every day serving New Yorkers on every single street. Next. So while our day job, and I think that this is going to be true of everyone who watches this webinar and my other guests who are presenting, is emergency services, is supporting the city, police, fire, sanitation services 24 hours a day. That's the day job, providing reliable fleet services. But we're trying to do so in the most sustainable way possible. And of course, this is probably the hardest sector to do that, right? Emergency services are operating in very, very difficult situations, well beyond your kind of, golf trip and market trip on the weekend. But we're making a lot of progress. So we have a 3-part plan. Electrify everything you can as soon as you can, and there are definitely segments you can't electrify just yet. Replace fossil diesel with biofuels. We no longer use fossil diesel in our fleet. Emergency, non-emergency, winter, summer, anywhere. We use all renewable diesel and with some biodiesel, 100%. And then implement efficiencies. The more efficient fleet, the right size fleet, the best design fleet matters no matter what your propulsion system. Next. So just our Earth Day post, we're a little bigger now, about 22,000 more vehicles operating off alternative fuels, over 5,600 electric, 4,500 hybrids, and then all the diesel on renewable diesel. So you can make progress and progress in scale. Next. So Mayor Adams signed what now we refer to as Local Law 140 in October of 2023. This is a local law that requires the entire city fleet, no exceptions, emergency, non-emergency, police, civilian, to go electric by 2035 for light and medium, by 2038 for heavy and specialized. There are exemptions and exceptions if an operation doesn't have an electric option. Take, for example, snow plowing, which really we don't have an option right now for electric. We can have exceptions in the law, but the standard is everything that can be electric, not just should be, but must be by law. Next. We've published a lot. I'm going to talk about what we're doing in the emergency services side, but we've published a lot of reports on electrification lately, and so I hope you'll take a look at those. We'll send out this presentation. And there's a lot of discussion of efficiency out there in our country. So we believe electrification is a core component of efficient fleet operations. And we talk a lot about in some of these reports, but the internal combustion engine and helped build the modern world. It's not actually a particularly efficient way to propel a vehicle forward. Next. So a little bit about our EV fleet, and I mentioned that we're up about 5,600 electric vehicles now. We should be at 6,000 by the end of the year. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but over 800 of those are on lights and sirens vehicles throughout the fleet at all our different emergency service agencies. So it's not just civilian, over 800 on lights and sirens and more coming. We have an EV charging network that's all over the city of New York in scale. And there's the chart on the use of electric for powering vehicles. It's just going way up, just enormous expansion of the use of electric to power our vehicles, and we expect that to keep going. Next. So I want to start with the most challenging vehicles, but the most important to our discussion, which is the police department. And I'm going to start you with a video.
The color blue is often identified with police officers. It's an association that originates to the 19th century with the color of their uniforms. But here in New York, there's a new push for the NYPD to go green. Here's Chris Van Cleve.
Across New York City, the NYPD is going electric, adding nearly 200 Ford Mach-E's to patrol the streets, the nation's largest deployment of EVs as police cruisers. Do you feel like this is just as capable of a police car as a gas-powered car?
I do, yeah. I think it drives just as good, if not better in some ways, than the gas-powered cars.
You're convinced that this has a future in policing?
I am, yes.
The NYPD has been going green for years. Starting in 2009, the department tried out modified civilian hybrids, then lobbied Ford to make a true hybrid police car. Those units are about 40% more fuel efficient, saving 700 gallons of gas per year per vehicle. Now this pilot project takes civilian EVs and retrofits them for police work.
As we make this big move to electrification, law enforcement is going to be front and center.
New York City's chief fleet officer, Keith Kerman, is overseeing the addition of 1,000 new EVs a year.
You don't drive a police car the way you drive most normal fleet vehicles.
Absolutely. New York City's trying to and going to electrify in probably the toughest place to do it. Emergency services, law enforcement, sanitation, snow removal. And it's going to have challenges.
The NYPD test program is aimed at identifying some of those challenges and places where improvements can be made.
Our goal now is to gain as much data as we can to hopefully one day introduce these as 100% electric vehicles down the road.
Ford, the largest maker of police cars, expects that transition to be gradual.
It will be a slower progression to electric than it is for a retail customer to adjust to, just because a vehicle is used for a police officer in a much different way.
The Mach-E has more horsepower, more torque, more advanced safety features, a faster 0 to 60 time, and faster braking than any other vehicle in the NYPD fleet, something we experienced firsthand on the department's test track. Perhaps a preview of policing's electric future. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News, New York.
Thanks. I'm still trying to figure out how that reporter got behind the wheel of that vehicle, but we can talk about that some other time. So it's not just NYPD. We have a lot of law enforcement operations at the Parks Department, Sanitation Department, the Sheriff, the Taxi and Limousine Commission, my own agency, DCAS, the Department of Correction. We're moving to electric in all of them. There definitely are challenges, and some are making sure you have enough charging and fast charging that is available. For police, if you know New York City, there's not a lot of space around police precincts, and so we're going to put all kinds of additional charging. Then you also need backup power, and that's true of emergency services in general. I think it's the big issue not talked about in electrifying emergency services is what happens if you have a power disruption? What happens if you have a nor'easter and the power goes out in the first hour? Backup power traditionally for us is diesel generation to fuel sites. Now it's a big challenge. What will backup power be if all your vehicles are electric and it's the lights that go out? Huge challenge. Next slide. A few announcements that we've made recently. So, in the previous slide, I showed some of the agencies. I might add, we have about 800 vehicles now that are lights and sirens vehicles that are electric. So already this has moved forward. But a couple of fun announcements that we made very recently. One, the whole taxi and limousine commission and law enforcement fleet will be going electric by 2027. And if you know New York City, all the rideshare vehicles are expected to be electric by 2030 or to be accessible. So we're going to beat the requirements for rideshare with our own enforcement fleet of the rideshare rules, and they'll all be electric by 2027. We announced that with the taxi commissioner at the New York Auto Show. Next. At our own fleet show on May 15th, we announced with the fire commissioner that we will be putting out, and they're now been operating for the whole summer, the first electric vehicles that are responding to 911 calls out of the Emergency Medical Service EMS. So you have Mach-E's that are being operated by EMTs responding to life-threatening emergency calls off the 911 system, but through electric vehicles, what the fire department calls its fly car response program, to get vehicles as quickly as possible and EMTs as quickly as possible to life-threatening events. And for the first time, that's being done with electric vehicles. That is a major move forward. I don't know if there's anyone else in America, the whole world, doing that, but a major move forward as we try to go not just in the policing side, but in the emergency medical side. Next. On that same vein, we've made enormous progress on ambulances, one of our most important fleets and really the most challenging fleet to maintain. 24/7 we run ambulance services. Every ambulance today has an alternative power unit, a big battery that can be plugged in. Ambulances in New York City no longer idle on the engine, they idle on the battery, eliminating the noise, pollution, maintenance costs, smell from ambulance idling, waiting for a call. We're using renewable diesel, 100% in all of them. They, of course, have diesel particulate filters, which is federal law. And we now also have solar panels on more than half of them, with all of them going to go to solar panels to help offset the battery and to help charge the battery. One challenge of electrification in a segment like theirs, the ambulances don't have a lot of time to plug in. So you've got a battery, you got a plug, but what time do you have to plug in? So certainly when they're in a garage, or if there is an off time, they can plug in. But a lot of that now we're trying to get done through the solar panels, and so they're always in operation no matter what. As long as the sun's shining, the panels are feeding the battery. So even in something as complicated and as life critical as an ambulance, you can make a lot of progress. Diesel particulate filter, renewable diesel, electric battery plug-in, and solar power. 4 different environmental pursuits all happening, working together on the same ambulances. And now that's the whole fleet. That's not a pilot. That is the ambulance fleet at the City of New York. That's how they all operate today. Next. Some other just segments really interesting. We are for the safety of animals as well as for our own environmental benefit. We are now operating our first canine emergency response units as electric. Ford Lightnings being used as emergency response canine units in law enforcement. This one is at the Department of Correction, but we're looking at other enforcement agencies in the same, but electric. Safer for the dog, better, healthier for the service animal, and for the employees. Next. Department of Correction is also making moves to electric in other areas. These are our first all-electric correction buses. The core fleet of the Department of Correction, of course, is the correction bus to transport individuals to required court dates or to upstate prisons. And we're going to try and do that as much as possible in zero emission. Okay, we're also looking at our emergency command centers. Emergency command centers don't go a lot of miles necessarily, but they're operating at an emergency for 24, 48 hours, maybe for a week or a month. So we're looking at how we can use electric vehicles in that capacity. Can we use portable batteries to recharge the main battery? Can we plug them in on shore power? So you respond to an emergency situation, but then plug the vehicle in on shore power during a course of an emergency to keep the television and the communications all operating and the internal systems all operating. And this is a Department of Buildings unit that's already operating in that manner. Next slide. A few other examples are NYPD school safety units, Electric Today. Next slide. So I'll just talk a little bit about charging. We operate a large charging network, over 2,300 charging ports. Fast charging, especially for emergency services, you're going to need fast charging. Our standard fast charge used to be 60 kilowatts, 62 kilowatts. We're moving up to 150 to 180 kilowatts, so it's faster fast charging. Also, we've implemented solar carports, and I know you'll hear a little bit more about that from Wisconsin, but freestanding solar power, battery storage, completely off the grid. We have 160 of those now. We'll probably expand that program. Answering part of the question I asked earlier, what happens if the power goes out? So in our case, these solar carports don't depend on the grid. They would still be charging vehicles, and they're a backup. One solution, more will be needed for how we can keep going during emergency services, how we can keep them going if we had a power loss event. Next. We just published a battery study. I really hope you'll take a look at it. We studied over 6 million miles of batteries in actual operation. And two quick things. It's a real interesting study, but two quick things. One, electric battery is incredibly efficient, 9 times more efficient in actual operation than a gas engine, 9 times. But winter is real, right? There is a 35% to 40% winter impact, cold weather impact in the batteries. And that's what you lose on charging on range. You're going to charge more in the winter. And so that's something you have to plan for, and emergency services will have to plan for, at least with lithium-ion batteries as we're using now. Next. We've made a lot of progress, and so, we like to think we're the greenest fleet out there. I'm sure others will contend they are, but good luck with that. But we appreciate that, but we think it's just really important that we do everything possible as we perform our day-to-day jobs to do so in the most sustainable way possible, the safest way possible. We could talk about that some other time. Next. Thanks again for having us, and happy to have a chance to talk about this. I think it's a fascinating area. If you can electrify emergency services, you can electrify anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, for that great presentation. I'm particularly excited about your new electric EMS vehicles and what you're doing with solar. You guys are doing a great job. Next, we'll hear from Mahanth Joishi, Fleet Supervisor for Madison, Wisconsin. Take it away, Mahanth.
Thank you very much, Kyle, and thank you to the Electrification Coalition. It's a great group and a great partner to us here in Madison and across the nation. I'm very excited to talk about the work that Madison, Wisconsin is doing. We're somewhere in the middle, right? We're a middle-sized city. We're about the 81st biggest city in the United States. We're not quite as big as New York City, where I spent 16 years on Keith's team, working on various things, including electrification. And something that I want to do today is talk a little bit about angles that we don't talk about much. Kyle, can you do the slides for me? All right. Yeah, one back, please. So I would like to ask the audience, at whatever time you see this, how many of you took an autonomous electric bus to work this morning? How many of you took an autonomous bullet train this morning that would have taken you 3 hours of driving, but you got there in half an hour? Autonomous bullet train, all electric. How many of you this morning took an electric air taxi to work, also known as an eVTOL? Electric vehicle takeoff and landing. How many of you this morning took an electric driverless robo-taxi to work this morning? How many of you had a robot help you get ready this morning? Well, guess what? If we went to China right now, we could do all 5 of those things this morning in one day. And in the United States, we're falling woefully behind in these areas, not just in the cars that you see, but the R&D it takes to make them, the battery technology it takes to make them, the recycling it takes to make them, the supply chains, the workforce development, the manufacturing, the national security we like to talk about. China is crushing us on everything I just mentioned. And this is all preventable and it can be solved. That's why we're here. It's not just about the economy. It's not just about the national security situation. It's also about something we in China are facing together, which I think you know this is why we're here. If you want to talk about climate change, things like forest fires, hurricanes with cute names like Aaron, even though there's nothing cute about them. Typhoons, depending on what part of the world you're in, they call hurricanes typhoons. There's droughts, there's floods. To me personally, my dad is a heart patient and he has to go back and forth to the hospital every day this week in 108-degree weather. There is nothing good or safe about that. Nothing against California. This is happening all over the world right now. So I think we all have seen these effects. We don't have to debate them, although some people feel like we should. I believe we shouldn't care who's in Washington and in power. We need to work on this every day. We as government officials, which is all of us on this call today, in various states, villages, municipalities, county governments, federal government agencies, we have the power to do this. It's our job as government to lead the industry into the green technology future that we all want. And this is something I learned from Keith Kerman in New York City and that we're trying to do in a new place. Next slide, please. It's not all doom and gloom. So I mentioned government. Government is who buys police vehicles. Government is who buys fire trucks. Government is who buys plow trucks, typically, or private companies contracted by us, the government, doing these functions and many, many others. So we're a medium-sized fleet, as I mentioned, 1,400 vehicles. But if you're a fleet of 10 vehicles, 30,000, 1,000, this will apply to all of us because we're in this together. This is something we need a national effort on. We've just seen 100 Sputniks in a row, right in front of our eyes on AI and the other things I've mentioned. It is a race. They want to beat us really badly, and they want to do it their way. They want to do it with slave labor. They want to do it with subsidies by the Communist Party at every level of local, provincial, and federal government in China. They're doing it right now. And that's what we're up against. We need to act like we are in this competition. Right now, we've given up. They have bullet trains covering their entire country. We can't even build a bullet train in California. I hate to keep picking on California, but 30 years later, over budget, we don't have a bullet train system in California. I think it's embarrassing that China's eating our lunch in this area the last few decades. Next slide, please. Okay, we are government. We can do positive things. We need to do much more, much faster, I believe. But a piece of good news from Wisconsin, Pierce Manufacturing is a local manufacturer in Wisconsin. They make all of our fire trucks. Another company called Seagrave also makes all of New York City's fire trucks. We have some great manufacturing here in the Midwest. We unveiled the first ever fire truck that can do all of its operations electrically in May 2021. Today's presentation, the word I want you all to take away is demo. We did a 2-year demo to gather data. Something I'm very proud of is the firefighters, the brave firefighters who use this truck every day, this demo prototype, the first one in North America. They shaped the design of this truck for all future EV fire trucks for the rest of history in the United States and other places. And this is an area we need to be leading in. And it's not an option. We have to do these things. We have to electrify emergency services. It's not something that's nice and cute to do. It's absolutely essential. And we're very proud to have now the first electric fire truck from Pierce on that came off the production line right into service here in Madison. And that is the photo you might have seen on the Electrification Coalition's banner. Next slide. The Pierce Volterra, we're very proud of this. This is the first one off the production line. It's based entirely on the data they collected from 3 different cities doing prototypes. We need more innovation in this country. We're falling behind in that area as well, but we're first in America, at least to this particular product. We're very proud of that as a customer and as a partner with Pierce Manufacturing, local jobs right here in Wisconsin. Next slide, please. All right, demo. Again, not everything works. We had our police chief, Sean Barnes, who was a friend of mine. He was here for several years in a black Tesla. He recently got a job in Seattle to run the Seattle Police Department. In that interim period, we don't have a police chief, we have an acting police chief, but that Tesla came over to me, so I'm using it in the meanwhile. So unintended consequence of personnel moves, but someone can enjoy having a Tesla Model 3 in the meanwhile. We also have a number of other vehicles. We have Bolts doing parking enforcement with the light and siren packages. We have a bunch of Mach-E's as well. We followed in New York's footsteps for police vehicles, for administration, as well as for detectives to have Mach-E's. We have a really, really good bus rapid transit program with 67 all-electric buses that are articulated here in Madison, all with major heavy-duty charging, just like our fire trucks. Next slide, please. Okay, and we have 2 trash trucks. One is a side loader, one is a rear loader. They have been named Vin No Diesel and Trash Gordon. Thanks to a public contest the city of Madison ran, a really good idea, I think, to get local people engaged in the Madison community. Trash Gordon and Vin No Diesel are operating every day just fine, including through the winter. These are made by Mack, and this is another thing where we studied what New York City did. Mack is obviously a brand that we're familiar with for our regular vehicles. And if you don't think these are emergency service vehicles, go one day in your community without trash pickup and see if people think of it as an emergency or not. Next slide, please. Okay, carbon reduction. So electric is one part of a grand strategy that New York and our community and others are using, which includes renewable diesel, biodiesel. It includes, we have CNG vehicles, we have other things that we do in our facilities. For example, we have 800 solar panels on our fleet headquarters that helps take care of our hot water needs and our power needs. And we're experimenting with battery storage. Keith mentioned the solar powered electric vehicle charging. We also have throughout the city, we have solar panels on structures and buildings that are connected to EV charging, both public and private, or for fleets. And all of that is part of the future. Unfortunately, a lot of these solar panels are not made here in the United States. They're made in China, just like a lot of other things that we need. And that's a bit of a chokehold for us. That is unacceptable. And I think transportation is only part of a larger rubric of where we need to be more innovative, competitive, manufacture more, et cetera. So carbon reduction is great. This is hopefully only the first inning of the game. I hope we have a lot more carbon reduction to show you on charts like this in the future. I hope this is just the beginning for us. Next slide, please. Okay, partnerships. So number one, the number 2 thing I'd like you to take away beside the word demo, okay? Demo is something you have to try that your using agency has to be able to use properly. So we've tested out electric ambulances. We're very interested in them. I know a lot of folks are. We've tested out setting up police vehicles as EVs, but none of them as patrol just yet because our police department isn't. They feel like they're not ready for that, and we have to figure out some charging questions and that kind of thing. We need better public charging, I believe, to make some of our own fleet electrification work better. And we really need folks in the public to get into EVs for this to matter. And that's why we're actually doing what we're doing, to set an example as government, that the mayor's office can use electric vehicles, that the fire department can use electric trucks, that the police department can use electric cars. And if they can, so can you. for your household, for your family, for your budget savings, for your own greener footprint. So none of this happens without partnerships. Obviously, in New York City, great partner. So is Electrification Coalition and so many others. Whether it's in our new building construction, we've had great partners. The soybean community of the United States and Wisconsin has been a great partner. For the fire truck, if you look on the top left there, we had Pierce involved. Our city engineering department handles all of our facilities, including charging, which is a huge growing area, is the charging space. And there is a wide variance of quality and types of charging that we need to learn more about for ourselves as city fleets or municipal fleets, and for the public as well. The future we all want will require us to blanket the earth with things like solar and electric charging. And so we can be early testers, examples for our communities, and convince our communities to adopt this, which is what I'm doing now full-time for the mayor's office. I'm just working on electrification for the public. Since a lot of our, honestly, a lot of our electric vehicle fleet stuff is ordering and waiting for months, years. There's not a lot to do if you're trying to electrify on charging on vehicles. That's unfortunate. That has to change as well. If anyone from industry watches this, build it. We will get it. We will buy it. And we are partners with you. The government can't do it alone, but neither can the public sector. We need public-private partnerships. That is what made America great in the past. It built our railway system. It built our highway system. It built our airline system and our air traffic control system. It built our, unfortunately, things like our gas station system that we're trying to overturn now in the future. So that's all I had. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you so much, Mahanth, for that excellent presentation. I'm very excited about your electric fire and refuse trucks, and I really think you and Keith are doing a great job leading the way and really showing that the future can be faster than we think and that we have the tools we need to do big things, good things, great work. Next, we'll hear from Neil Cervenka, Chief of Police at Fort Bragg, California. Take it away, Neil.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Thank you to the coalition for having me. It's a little bit different perspective with the two fleet managers and a chief of police on here. I'm going to speak more to the implementation of an EV fleet and getting buy-in from the employees. Officers are often hesitant to try new things, and we're going to discuss that. A little bit about me. I've been in law enforcement for 25 years. The last 3 years, I've been chief of the city of Fort Bragg, and I am retiring October 1st. So I'm coming to the end of my career, but we started this EV transition as soon as I got here. Part of that was the governor's mandate shortly before I started that there will be no gas vehicles sold in California after 2035. So I anticipated that would impact government much sooner, and there would be a mandate for government vehicles to switch over to EV much sooner. So trying to get ahead of the curve, I pushed that EV plan so we could get our infrastructure, we could get our vehicles, because typical government, you wait until the last year before a mandate, and then there's a mad rush and nothing's available and everyone's out of compliance. So where is Fort Bragg? Fort Bragg is about as far west in the continental United States that you can get. There's only one town further west than us. We're in Mendocino County on the northern California coast. We have about 7,000 population and about 19 sworn with 8 marked vehicles in our patrol fleet. So almost like New York City. Just a smidge smaller than us. One thing I'd like to point out is the 2018 Department of Justice report said that 73% of the police departments in the United States were fewer than 25 sworn officers. So we sit in the majority, and the majority of police departments are similar to the size of Fort Bragg. So if we can do it, 73% of the agencies can do it. We had council direction, council goals to go EV in the city several years before I got here. And then when I got here, I wanted to go EV, so we were the first department to do it. Fort Bragg has a focus on technology for our officers. We have all the toys, all the cameras and license plate readers and everything to make their job more efficient, because generally we only have 2 officers on at any given time for a town of 7,000, but it's a tourist-based economy, so that population this summer can explode up to 25,000. So making sure our officers are very efficient is very important. So why EVs for law enforcement? When pitching the idea to decision makers, framing is important depending on political views or what their goals are. So you can use the environmental benefits. Patrol cars do a lot of idling. They sit and they idle all day long, and that's to keep all the electronics and the computers and everything going in the cars while the officers are out on calls. So you're wasting a lot of fuel during that idling. When everything is electric, you could just run it off the battery. Flip side of that is the economic savings and the savings of general fund taxpayer dollars. For us, the initial cost was about the same, but we are projecting a $40,000 a year savings on fuel for just 8 marked patrol vehicles. Our maintenance cost is about a third of what internal combustion patrol cars were, and our fleet department can roll those cars out for our regular maintenance in about 30 minutes versus 2.5 hours, which what the Explorers were running. The performance of the Lightning is incredible. I never considered using a truck before, but they're not pursuit rated, and there's a lot of police departments that get hung up on that pursuit rating. If you really look at what pursuit rating is, the reason why a Lightning doesn't qualify is because the top speed is governed at 130, and pursuit rated you have to be at 140. Personally, I don't want my officers even doing 130 miles an hour in today's litigious world, so it was not a problem for me. The community relations is fantastic. They're wonderful icebreakers and get the public to come up and talk to us about them. The picture you see in the slide is when we went to Cops West down in Ontario, which is by Los Angeles. It's about a 650-mile drive from Fort Bragg, and we had to stop at chargers all along the way. Great story was we pulled into a charger, and there was a EV next to us at the charger that just gave us the dirtiest look when we pulled in, because they thought it was a police car taking up an EV spot. And when we got out of the truck and pulled off the charger handle and plugged it into the truck, they jumped out of their car, and they were so excited to see an EV police car. And we got to talk to them about the police car. We got to show them, all the stuff it had, and it completely changed their perception about not only EV police cars, but about law enforcement in general, that we were so approachable. And they really are the best tool for our officers with safety, performance, and the utility of the F-150 Lightning. So the implementation of this program on paper was supposed to be super smooth. It was not. Everything that could go wrong did. Our first step was to consider the infrastructure and how the overall program would work. We got our public works engineers on it from the very beginning, from the very start. And thankfully, they were EV fans and embraced our vision of converting over to EV. We researched available grants. The USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, oddly enough, provides funds to rural agencies to purchase police cars. We originally had enough budgeted for 2 new trucks. The USDA gave us enough funding for 2 additional trucks. So we were able to replace 50% of our fleet with EV at once. USDA came out to take pictures of what they paid for. They were so impressed that they gave us more money for a 5th truck right away. So over half our fleet was transitioned within 6 months. For us, we have PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, which is our electric company on the West Coast that everybody sues every time there's a wildfire. So they have an EV fleet program for municipalities. And what they do is they pay and do the infrastructure to bring the DC from pole to site. They do all the trenching, they do all the work. They also assist with planning and permits, and then they provide an incentive-based dollar amount based on the savings each vehicle is projected to produce. So it gives us more money to buy chargers and things like that. And then we also had the California Air Resources Board provide a grant that paid for about 40% of the chargers. So the overall cost for us was relatively small. So we also had to make sure that that whatever EV we chose would be suitable for a coastal environment. Salt air is very tough on things, but we don't have snow like New York and Madison, and we rarely gets above 70 degrees, and it rarely goes below 40 degrees. So for EV operational range, we're really in that sweet spot that it was going to work out well. When selecting the EV, I had originally been considering the Mach-E. It had been used in several areas. I wasn't interested in Tesla due to the size and functionality. I have a friend in Menlo Park. He's a chief there. They were testing a Tesla. They've had some difficulties with some of the automatic features in them, not being suitable for law enforcement. It's not a bad car. It's just not right for law enforcement. And it would be very difficult to get work done on it in our very rural, remote area. We're about 3 hours from the next major city. It's very remote. We have to cross mountain ranges to get anywhere. So a representative from Ford that I was speaking with suggested we look at the Lightning Pro SSV, Special Services Vehicle, which was due to be released in 2023. After I researched it and they were doing some functional things specifically for law enforcement, I made the decision to go with the Lightnings. The trucks made sense for utility and functionality of police work. The internal combustion traditional F-150 was already a police vehicle, so outfitting them would be much easier, much cheaper. We wouldn't need custom work. We wouldn't need to have specialty parts made. We're not buying on the scale that New York City is. So when New York City says we need Wayland to make this part because we're going to outfit 100 cars, Wayland does what New York City wants. But when we're trying to outfit 4 or 5 trucks, we would have to have our outfitters customize things. So using the F-150 made a lot more sense for that. And also, shockingly, police cars get damaged, they get wrecked, they get, it's a full contact sport in law enforcement. So fixing them with parts from the most popular selling truck in North America just made a whole lot more sense. Our local body shops could take care of that. So infrastructure planning was mostly the Public Works Department. They did all the heavy lifting and the planning and the architecture. I just picked a location in our parking lot where I wanted everything to go. I was involved in all the meetings, but I left the technical aspects to the professionals. We ordered the transformer, which was like the key to this whole thing. They told us 6 months, and then 4 months into that delivery time, we found out it was going to be at least another year because of supply chain issues that occurred in 2022. And nothing else could be started. PG&E wouldn't do anything until we got the transformer in place. So based on the size of our fleet, it was determined that 2 level 3 DC chargers and 4 level 2 chargers would be sufficient to adequately charge our fleet. And the system was built to allow another level 2 charger to be added on down the line later on with very minimal cost. Public Works had set up 2 external 220 volt outlets outside the building, so we could charge just with extension cords and the level 2 chargers that come with all the Fords. They averaged about 6 kilowatt charging an hour, so charging was slow. It was not efficient or convenient. Everyone made it work. But I'll tell you, they appreciate the high-speed chargers a lot now that they've gone through 2 years of doing standard 6 kilowatt per hour charging. And then we were waiting for the Tesla adapters for our trucks to come in, and those were delayed too. They arrived a few weeks before our chargers were installed. So now we have an alternative source because even in our small town, we have a Tesla supercharger, so we can charge our trucks there if something happens to our chargers. Also, the 220 volt outlets are on our propane generator. Power goes out on the coast a lot. So when we have storms coming in, the policy is that all the trucks get charged to 100%. And then if power goes down, we can switch back to those 220 volt outlets that run on a propane generator, and we're good. And having the multiple chargers on site has been an absolute game changer for staff. We have all of the complaints and problems have completely dissipated. Yep. So I conducted a survey of our officers after they've been driving them about 2 years, because really, for me as a chief, the end user input is what's important. It's really cool to put EV out and be one of the first in the nation and be, you know, an early adopter and push the stuff out. But if the staff doesn't like it, it doesn't matter, because it's not going to be an effective program. They're going to complain about it. They're going to revolt. They're not going to want to use them. So getting that employee input and the end user input is critically important. So during the survey, I found that the most difficult part about the implementation was wrapping our heads around the EVs. I had been doing research on this for years, so I understood it. I understood the differences. I understood range. I understood that, but I failed as a leader to ensure everybody else did. They got basic information when we got them, but it was more like you throw them the key fob and you say, go drive it and figure it out. And that was, you know, that's the way I learned how to do police work 25 years ago. But that's not what, as a police leader, we should be doing now. We should be ensuring that that training is from the very beginning, and done a better job at creating a standardized transition program. So some of our challenges, I couldn't find any other agencies our size in the country who were replacing a whole fleet at one time with EVs, especially patrol vehicles. There's a lot of places that were doing detectives and administration and support roles and animal control, but nobody was really doing just full-fledged jump in with both feet patrol cars in 2022. So we had to learn as we went, build the plane as we were flying it, so to speak. The outfitter we used also didn't have anyone to use as a reference for outfitting a patrol F-150 Lightning. So they worked with Ford engineers to develop a second battery system in the frunk, which you see in that picture. The standard OEM 12 volt in the Lightning is too small to run all of the 12 volt emergency equipment. So they added a deep cycle marine grade battery and connected it all into the system. And then that trickle charges off the main battery when the voltage drops to a certain point. Their initial calculations, figuring everything out with an electrical engineer, was that we could leave all of our emergency equipment on, the radio, the lights, everything like at a car accident, and you could leave it on for days if you started with a battery at 80%, a main battery at 80%, which completely blows those naysayers out of the water, saying for a police car, what happens if you're on a crash site and you got to leave your lights on? Because people are thinking about a Crown Victoria with a 12 volt car battery goes dead after a few hours if it's not running. And this is a completely different system, and that really helps get people to understand that. So, and then one of our biggest technical challenges with implementing the Lightnings is Ford had some battery issues in 2023 models, which has required 3 of our trucks to have new batteries installed, which extends the warranty, and it's great, but it's out of service for a while, and in a small fleet that makes a big difference. But it was the first run of batteries. We expected there would be problems. There's always problems on that first model year. So after 2 years of use, 80% of the officers responding were happy with the Lightning. More importantly, 0% they said they did not want to use them. In the police world, making 80% happy and 0% completely unhappy is unheard of. So that's great information for a police leader, knowing that we are on the right path and this is going to be a successful program. Our future growth plans here in Fort Bragg is we currently have 6 Lightnings with a 7th on order right now, and the 8th is in next year's budget. We have 1 Mach-E we just got it a few months ago for our social services unit. They work with the homeless, and they prefer it over their hybrid minivan. And we are planning to replace the SRO vehicle with a Mach-E as well. So we're really going fully electric. So in conclusion, start planning your infrastructure early if you're going to do this, especially the smaller agencies that have much less resources. That is the most difficult part of the process, was the infrastructure. Buying a car is easy, but getting that infrastructure and knowing where to charge and how your officers are going to do it is super critical. Get a trainer for your staff, reach out to experts, find consultants before the EVs arrive, so they can start getting people their heads wrapped around training videos, things of that nature. So understanding EVs is crucial for a successful deployment. Expect obstacles and have alternative plans. You know, your chargers might not be able to go in a certain area, so have an alternative plan. If you get a test vehicle or a demo vehicle, or if you're going to buy one vehicle just to try it out, start doing training with all the staff. Find your unofficial leaders in the department, those officers and the field training officers that don't have rank, but everybody listens to them, and get them on board early, because if they like it, others will follow and like it as well, and you'll have a much more successful deployment, much smoother deployment. Talk to other agencies who've done this. That everyone is willing to share information. Obviously, you had 3 people on the panel today from East Coast, Midwest, and West Coast. So we're throughout the country, and you have New York City and little Fort Bragg. So I mean, you have every range that you can possibly think of that's doing this across the country, and have your fleet department join in the training with officers. For us, that we didn't, bigger, where like New York, where fleet's doing all this stuff, and they're probably going to know more about the EVs than the officers. In our city, it's kind of reversed. Our fleet department wasn't brought in on that training, so our fleet mechanics really don't understand the EVs, and that was a fault of me. We should have brought them in on the training and got them to drive it and got them to understand it. So that's particularly important in the smaller agencies. Talk to the outfitters early. I'm sure New York and Madison have their in-house outfitters, but most small agencies use third-party outfitters and vendors. Have them start planning. Our first Lightning took 1.5 to 2 months to finish, and now that they've got it figured out, they can kick them out in a week, which is pretty impressive for a fully outfitted, kitted out police truck. And then take your EV patrol cars to every community event you possibly can. Do press releases, do social media, get the community involved in them. Then you get that community support, and then if you have community support, you have political support, and then you can continue to build that program. So thank you. That's all for me. I put my personal email down there because my work email won't work in another 5 weeks. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to chat with you about it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Neil, for that great presentation. Congrats on your upcoming retirement. And I'm impressed by how you've electrified nearly all of Fort Bragg's police fleet. Great work. I'm so grateful for all of our guests today for their leadership in electrification and for taking the time to show how we can electrify the country. Thanks for being here today, and we'll see you next time.